Jamal Carter stood in the packed courtroom, sweat beading on his forehead. Judge Holt smirked, sentencing his brother to life for a crime he didn't commit. But Holt didn't know who he was dealing with. Jamal had a fire in his eyes, and a plan. What happens next will shock you. Welcome to 30 Minds. Hit like and subscribe, because this story of justice, betrayal, and a city on fire is about to begin. So, let's begin. Jamal Carter stood in the packed courtroom, sweat beading on his forehead, as Judge Holt smirked from the bench, sentencing his brother, Darius, to life for a crime he didn't commit. The all-white jury snickered, the gavel slammed, and Holt's booming laugh echoed, mocking the skinny black teen in a thrift store suit. Nobody knew Jamal had memorized every law book in the library. Nobody saw the fire in his eyes. That laugh would haunt him forever, sparking a war he'd wage alone against a system rigged to crush him. What would Jamal do next? Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice against all odds, hit that like and subscribe, because tomorrow's explosive episode will leave you speechless. Jamal Carter couldn't sleep that night. The echo of Judge Holt's laugh rattled in his skull, a jagged blade slicing through every thought. His brother, Darius, was gone, locked away in a concrete tomb 40 miles outside their crumbling southern city, all because of a system that saw black skin as a guilty verdict. The courtroom scene replayed endlessly, the jury's smirks, the gavel's crack, the way Holt's lips curled like he'd won some sick game. Jamal's fists clenched under the thin blanket in his tiny bedroom, the one he shared with Darius until yesterday. A thrift store suit hung crooked on a nail in the wall, still wrinkled from the trial. He stared at it, chest tight, knowing he couldn't let that laugh be the end, not when he'd spent years hunched over library tables, memorizing legal codes while other teens chased footballs or girls. He'd always known the law could be a weapon, but now it was his only one. By sunrise, Jamal was at the kitchen table, a chipped mug of cold coffee beside him, surrounded by Darius's case files. He'd swiped them from the public defender's office 2 weeks back, sneaking in during a lunch break when the overworked lawyer left his desk unguarded. The papers were a mess, coffee-stained and dog-eared, but Jamal's photographic memory cut through the chaos like a laser. He found the arrest report: Darius, 22, accused of robbing a gas station on Peach Street, caught with a gun that wasn't his. The witness, a twitchy white cashier, swore Darius pulled the trigger, but the timestamps didn't line up. Jamal's pulse quickened. He flipped to the sentencing transcript, eyes narrowing at Holt's final words: life without parole. Case closed. No appeal filed. No fight. The defender had barely spoken. Jamal's jaw tightened. He'd do it himself. He spent the morning drafting an appeal, hands trembling as he typed on a borrowed laptop from his neighbor, Miss Tasha. Every word had to be perfect, every statute airtight. Section 32 of the state code gave him 30 days post-sentencing to file, and he was on day 2. He cited ineffective counsel, procedural errors, and new evidence, a grainy photo from Darius's phone showing him at a barbershop 3 miles away when the robbery went down. By noon, he printed it at the library, the machine humming as his future took shape. He stuffed the papers into a manila envelope, pulled on that wrinkled suit, and marched to the courthouse, 3 blocks from his mom's sagging porch. The building loomed like a fortress, graystone stained with decades of neglect. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and power. Jamal approached the clerk's desk, a wooden barrier manned by a middle-aged white woman with pinched lips and a badge reading, Doris. He slid the envelope forward, voice steady despite the sweat pooling under his collar. Filing an appeal for Darius Carter, case number 7629. Doris glanced up, eyes raking over his faded tie and scuffed shoes. Boy, you can't just waltz in here with that mess. You a lawyer? Her tone dripped venom, the word boy a slap. Jamal swallowed fire, keeping his gaze level. I'm his brother. I've got the right to file under state law, Section 32, subsection B. Doris snorted, shoving the envelope back. We don't take trash from kids. Get a real attorney or get out. Jamal's stomach nodded, but he didn't budge. He'd read the rules. He knew his ground. Ma'am, you're required to accept this. Refusal's a violation of my due process rights, Article 9, State Constitution. Doris's face flushed purple, but before she could snap, a second clerk, a balding man with a lazy eye, ambled over. What's this nonsense? He muttered, snatching the papers. He skimmed them, then chuckled, tossing them into a bin. Hallelujah. Look at this, some black kid thinks he's Perry Mason. Jamal's blood boiled, but he kept his voice cold. You're breaking the law. I'll report you to the state bar. The man smirked, leaning close enough for Jamal to smell his stale breath. Go ahead, boy. Nobody cares. Word spread fast. By afternoon, Judge Holt caught wind of the filing and summoned an emergency hearing. Jamal got the call from a courthouse runner, a skinny kid who looked as shocked as Jamal felt. 4 o'clock sharp. Holt's pissed. Jamal nodded, heart hammering. He grabbed his notes, a spiral notebook crammed with scribbled statutes, and headed back, suit sticking to his skin in the humid March air. The courtroom was half full when he arrived, a mix of bored reporters and Holt's cronies in cheap suits. Darius wasn't there, still caged 40 miles away, but Jamal felt his brother's presence in every breath. Judge Raymond Holt swept in at 4 on the dot, robes billowing like a vulture's wings. He was a mountain of a man, 6 feet 4 inches, with a buzz cut and a face carved from granite, eyes glinting with malice. He'd ruled this city's courts for 20 years, a king who thrived on breaking people like Jamal. He settled onto the bench, gavel in hand, and fixed Jamal with a stare that could melt steel. Mr. Carter, he drawled, voice thick with southern syrup and scorn, you're wasting my time. Explain this foolishness before I lock you up for disrespect. The gallery tittered, a ripple of amusement from men who'd never seen a black teen dare to stand there. Jamal stepped to the podium, knees shaking but spine straight. He clutched his notebook, the only shield between him and Holt's wrath. Your Honor, I'm filing an appeal for my brother, Darius Carter. The trial was flawed, his counsel didn't challenge false testimony, and I've got evidence proving he wasn't at the crime scene. His voice cracked on the first sentence, thin and reedy, and Holt pounced. You sound like a scared little boy playing lawyer. This ain't no school play. Sit down. The room erupted in laughter, a chorus of jeers that burned Jamal's ears. He gripped the podium tighter, forcing his tone steady. I've got the law on my side, Your Honor. Section 32 gives me the right to appeal, and I found a mistake in the transcript. Holt's eyebrows shot up, more amused than alarmed. A mistake? You're 16, son. You don't know a transcript from a comic book. Jamal flipped open his notebook, pointing to a line he'd circled in red ink, page 17, line 42. The prosecution's closing argument ran past the court's deadline, 8 minutes over the allotted time, per Rule 6.3 of the State Code. That voids the verdict. He slid the transcript across the podium, hands trembling but eyes locked on Holt. The judge snatched it, skimming the page with a scowl. The room went quiet, every breath held as Holt's face shifted from mockery to fury. Jamal pressed on, voice gaining strength. The law says a timed closing invalidates the trial. You've got to grant a retrial. Holt's jaw clenched, a vein pulsing in his thick neck. He flipped the transcript shut, slamming it onto the bench with a crack that made Jamal flinch. The gallery gasped, a collective intake of air. Holt leaned forward, eyes blazing, but his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You're a clever little rat, aren't you? Fine. Retrial granted, but don't think you've won anything. He banged the gavel, the sound of a gunshot in the silence. Court's adjourned. Get out of my sight. Jamal exhaled, legs wobbling as he gathered his papers. The reporters scribbled furiously, phones buzzing with the scoop, a black teen had forced Holt's hand. He'd done it. He'd cracked the wall. As he stepped into the hallway, a flicker of pride warmed his chest. Darius had a shot now. But then he saw Holt through the courtroom door, still on the bench, muttering into a phone. The judge's lips curled into a snarl, eyes flicking toward Jamal with pure hate. "Handle the kid." Holt growled into the receiver before hanging up. Jamal's stomach dropped. He'd won a battle, but Holt wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Whatever came next would be worse, and Jamal knew it. Jamal Carter stumbled out of the courthouse, the late afternoon sun searing his eyes after the dim, oppressive glow of Judge Holt's domain. His thrift store suit clung to his skin, damp with sweat from the battle he'd just fought and won. The retrial order buzzed in his head like a victory song, a fragile hope that Darius might breathe free air again. He clutched his notebook, pages crinkled from his death grip during the hearing, and started the 3-block trek home. The city streets hummed with life, horns blaring, kids shouting, but Jamal's mind was elsewhere. Could Holt really be forced to back down? Had he actually bent the system just enough to crack it open? His chest swelled with a flicker of triumph as he turned onto Sycamore Lane, the sagging row houses of his neighborhood coming into view. He was 50 feet from his front stoop when the screech of tires snapped him back to reality. A police cruiser lurched around the corner, gravel spitting under its wheels, and skidded to a stop inches from his legs. Jamal froze, heart slamming against his ribs. 2 white cops spilled out, their uniforms crisp, their faces twisted with menace. The taller one, a wiry man with a buzz cut and a scar slicing his left eyebrow, strode forward, baton swinging lazily at his side. Well, if it ain't Holt's little lawyer," he sneered, voice dripping with acid. The shorter cop, stocky with a sunburned neck, circled behind Jamal, boots crunching on broken glass. "Fit a description, boy. Armed and dangerous. Hands up." Jamal's stomach plummeted. Was this Holt's revenge already? How fast could a judge's spite turn into a fist? "I'm not armed," Jamal said, voice steady despite the tremor in his knees. He raised his hands slow and high, notebook still clutched in his right fist. "Just came from court. You can check." The tall cop smirked, stepping closer until his breath, sour with coffee, hit Jamal's face. "Check. Oh, we'll check, all right." Without warning, he slammed Jamal against the cruiser's hood, metal hot from the sun searing through his thin jacket. Pain flared across his chest as the cop's baton pressed into his spine. The shorter one yanked Jamal's arms back, snapping cuffs tight enough to bite skin. "What's this?" he muttered, fishing in Jamal's pocket. His hand emerged with a baggie of weed, green and pungent, that Jamal had never seen before. "Looks like drugs to me." Jamal's mind raced, 1,000 laws flashing through his brain. "That's not mine." "You planted it," he shouted, twisting to face them. The tall cop laughed, a sharp bark that echoed Holt's courtroom cackle. "Planted, hear that, Eddie? Kid thinks he's smart." Eddie, the stocky one, grabbed Jamal by the collar and hauled him into the cruiser's back seat. The door slammed shut, trapping him in a cage of cracked vinyl and stale air. Through the window, he saw neighbors peering from porches, eyes wide but mouths shut. Did they know this was a setup? Would anyone dare speak up? The engine roared, and the car peeled out, tires squealing as Jamal's world tilted into chaos. Inside the cruiser, the cops didn't hold back. The tall one drove, glancing back in the rearview with a grin, while Eddie turned in the passenger seat, fist cocked. "Holt says you need a lesson, genius," he growled, then smashed his knuckles into Jamal's jaw. Pain exploded, blood flooding his mouth, coppery and warm. Another blow landed on his ribs, a sickening crack stealing his breath. "Think you can embarrass a judge and walk away?" Eddie snarled, punching again. Jamal curled into himself, arms shielding his face, but the hits kept coming, relentless, each one a message from Holt's throne. How far would they go? Could a 16-year-old survive this kind of hate? The precinct loomed ahead, a squat brick building ringed with razor wire, a fortress of fear in the heart of the city. They dragged Jamal inside, his sneakers scraping concrete, and shoved him into an interrogation room. The walls were gray, stained with desperation, and a single bulb buzzed overhead. Eddie uncuffed him, just to slam him into a metal chair, the impact jarring his bruised ribs. "Stay put, boy," the tall cop said, tossing the baggie onto the table. "You're looking at possession, maybe intent to sell. Hallelujah, love putting you away too." Jamal spat blood onto the floor, glaring up through swollen eyes. "I know my rights. Article 12, State Code. I get a phone call." The cops exchanged a look, surprise flickering before the tall one shrugged. "Fine, one call. Make it quick." He tossed a grimy phone across the table, its cord tangled like a noose. Jamal's hands shook as he dialed, every digit a lifeline. Ms. Lena picked up on the second ring, her voice sharp with worry. "Jamal, what's wrong?" He swallowed pain, words tumbling out. "Cops jumped me, planted drugs. I'm at the precinct, need help." Lena didn't hesitate. "Hold tight, I'm coming." The line clicked dead, and the tall cop snatched the phone back, smirking. "Good luck, kid. Nobody's saving you from Holt." Time crawled in that room, each minute a hammer on Jamal's nerves. His jaw throbbed, his ribs ached with every breath, but his mind stayed sharp, replaying the arrest, Section 15, unlawful search, Section 19, excessive force. He could fight this, if he lived long enough. Footsteps echoed outside, and the door swung open. Ms. Lena stormed in, a wiry black woman in her 50s, dreadlocks pulled tight, eyes blazing with fury. She carried a bail receipt and a glare that made the cops flinch. "You're done here," she snapped, slapping the paper down. "He's out now." Eddie scowled, but the tall one waved a hand. "Take him, he's trash anyway." Jamal staggered to his feet, leaning on Lena as they shuffled out. The precinct's fluorescent light stung his eyes, but freedom tasted sweeter than the blood in his mouth. Outside, dusk painted the sky orange, and Lena guided him to her beat-up sedan. "They're Holt's," she muttered, starting the engine. "He called in a favor the second you left court." Jamal nodded, wincing as he buckled in. "I won't stop. Darius needs me." Lena's grip tightened on the wheel. "You're brave, Jamal, but they'll kill you next time, you hear me?" He stared out the window, the city blurring past, a war zone he couldn't escape. Had he pushed Holt too far already? The cop's laughter lingered as Lena drove him to her place, a shotgun house on the edge of town. She patched him up, antiseptic stinging his cuts, her hands steady but her voice tight. "You're a target now. Holt's got power you can't imagine." Jamal clenched his fists, the pain grounding him. "I'll find a way, I always do." She sighed, setting a glass of water beside him. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow's a new fight." He nodded, sinking into her couch, but sleep wouldn't come. Sirens wailed in the distance, a promise of more to come. The tall cop's words looped in his head, "Gets worse if you keep fighting." What did Holt have planned next? Comment with a 1 if you think Jamal should have stayed quiet to stay safe, or a 2 if you're rooting for him to keep swinging against Holt's crew. Like and subscribe if you're ready to see this kid take on the system, because the next twist will blow your mind. So what's Holt brewing up in the shadows? Will Jamal's next move outsmart the judge or walk him straight into a trap he can't escape? Jamal woke on Ms. Lena's couch, every muscle screaming from the cop's fists. Dawn crept through cracked blinds, painting the tiny living room in streaks of gold. His jaw ached, a dull pulse where Eddie's knuckles had landed, and his ribs throbbed with each shallow breath. The thrift store suit lay crumpled beside him, stained with blood and dirt, a silent witness to yesterday's war. Lena shuffled in from the kitchen, her dreadlocks swaying as she set a mug of tea on the table. "You're alive," she said, voice rough with relief. "That's a start." Jamal nodded, wincing as he sat up. "I've got work to do. Darius's retrial's coming." Lena's eyes narrowed. "After last night, Holt's not playing, Jamal. You're in his crosshairs." He ignored the warning, pulling his notebook from the suit's pocket. The pages were bent but intact, his lifeline to Darius. He'd won the retrial, but it meant nothing without proof. The photo from Darius's phone, time-stamped 9:32 p.m. on the night of the robbery, showed him laughing at a barbershop on Elm Street, 3 miles from the gas station. The cashier claimed the holdup happened at 9:28. Jamal's lips twitched into a grim smile. It was a crack in the case, a shard of truth the jury couldn't ignore. He spent the morning at Lena's table, scribbling a motion to submit new evidence, his handwriting jagged but precise. By noon, he was ready, the papers stuffed into a fresh envelope from Lena's drawer. The walk to the courthouse felt longer today, every shadow a threat. His sneakers scuffed the pavement, still crusted with precinct filth, and his swollen face drew stares from passers-by. The building loomed ahead, its gray stone a monument to power he dared to challenge. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and judgment. Jamal approached the clerk's desk again, steeling himself for Doris. She wasn't there. Instead, a younger white man with slick back hair and a smirk leaned against the counter, badge reading, Travis. Jamal slid the envelope forward. Motion to submit new evidence, Case 7629, Darius Carter. Travis barely glanced at it, twirling a pen between his fingers. "Another one, huh? You don't quit, do you, kid?" His tone was light, but his eyes were cold, a predator sizing up prey. Jamal kept his voice flat. "Just following State Code 34, subsection C. New evidence within 30 days. Travis chuckled, a sound that prickled Jamal's spine, and took the envelope, tossing it onto a pile behind him. "Sure thing, lawyer boy. We'll get right on that." The sarcasm stung, but Jamal turned away, notebook clutched tight. He'd done his part. The photo would hit the docket, and Holt would have to face it. As he stepped outside, a breeze cooled his bruised face, and for a moment he let himself hope. Maybe this was the edge he needed. That hope died the next morning. Lena shook him awake, her face tight with anger. Court called. "Your motion's gone. They say it never made it to the judge." Jamal bolted upright, pain flaring but ignored. "What? I filed it myself." Lena handed him her phone, the courthouse number still on the screen. He dialed, heart pounding, and Travis's voice oozed through. "Oh, that must have got lost. Happens all the time with you people." The line clicked dead. Jamal's hands shook, rage boiling in his gut. Lost? He'd handed it to Travis, watched him take it. This wasn't an accident. It was Holt flexing his claws through the system. He stormed back to the courthouse, ignoring Lena's pleas to wait. The clerk's desk was a battlefield now, and Travis stood ready, grinning like he'd been waiting. "Back so soon?" he taunted, leaning forward. "Told you, kid, it's gone. Black kids don't get justice here. Take the hint." Jamal slammed his fists on the counter, voice rising. "You destroyed it. That's tampering, Section 41, State Code. I'll prove it." Travis laughed, loud and sharp, drawing eyes from the hallway. "Prove what? Ain't no cameras here. It's your word against mine, and guess who Holt believes?" Jamal's chest heaved, every breath a fight against despair. He had no proof of the filing, no receipt, just his memory and a system that hated him. He didn't back down. By afternoon, he was in Holt's courtroom again, emotion scribbled on library paper to demand an investigation. The gallery was fuller this time, reporters sniffing a story, their pens scratching like vultures over a corpse. Holt swept in, robes billowing, his granite face etched with fury. He didn't wait for Jamal to speak. "Mr. Carter," he boomed, "so you're clogging my docket with nonsense. Explain yourself before I haul you off for wasting my time. Jamal stepped forward, bruises pulsing under his skin, and held up the new motion. Your Honor, the clerk lost my evidence, a photo proving Darius wasn't at the robbery. I filed it yesterday, and now it's gone. That's tampering. Holt's eyes glinted, a predator spotting weakness. Lost, you say? Convenient excuse for a boy who can't keep up. The gallery snickered, a wave of sound that burned Jamal's ears. He pushed forward, voice cutting through it. It's not an excuse. I handed it to Travis myself. He works for you, doesn't he? You're covering it up. The room gasped, a collective jolt, and Holt's face darkened, a storm brewing behind his scowl. You're accusing me of a crime, boy. That's contempt. $500 fine payable now or 30 days in lockup. He banged the gavel, the cracker gunshot, and leaned back smirking as Jamal stood frozen. Jamal had no money, no way to pay. His mom barely scraped rent, and Darius's commissary drained what little they had. He opened his mouth to argue, but a shout cut him off. I've got it. A young reporter, a black woman with braids and a fierce glare, stood in the gallery waving cash. 500 right here. Let the kid speak. The crowd buzzed, phones flashing as she marched to the bench, slapping bills down. Holt's smirk faltered, but he took the money, tossing it to a bailiff. Fine paid, but your little stunt's over, Carter. Get out. Jamal nodded at the reporter, a silent thank you, and grabbed his notebook, legs trembling as he left. Outside, the air crackled with chaos. The reporter, Aisha, caught up to him, camera in hand. That was insane. I recorded it all, Holt losing it. Jamal blinked, hope flickering. You got the tampering claim? She grinned, tapping her phone. Every word. It's live now. People are pissed. By nightfall, the video exploded online, hashtags like #JusticeForDarius trending across the city. Protests sprouted outside the courthouse, chants echoing through the streets. Jamal watched from Lena's window, heart pounding as crowds swelled, signs bobbing in the dusk. He'd struck a nerve. Maybe this was it, the tide turning. But then he saw Holt. The judge stood in his office window across town, silhouetted against the glow, phone pressed to his ear, his lips moving fast, a snarl twisting his face as he stared into the night. Jamal's stomach sank. Holt wasn't shaken. He was plotting. Minutes later, Lena's phone rang, an unknown number. She answered, face paling as she listened. Jamal, she whispered, hanging up, that was a friend downtown. Holt's calling in muscle. Something big's coming. Jamal's fists clenched, the viral fame souring in his gut. He'd lit a fire, but Holt was ready to burn it all down. What had he unleashed? Jamal Carter stood at Ms. Lena's window, the glass cool against his bruised knuckles, as he watched the protests swell below. The street pulsed with life, a sea of fists and signs scrolled with, "Free Darius," and, "Down with Holt," in bold, angry strokes. Aisha's video had ignited a firestorm, her footage of Holt's courtroom snarl looping online, racking up millions of views overnight. Chants rolled through the dusk, a rhythm of rage that shook the sagging row houses of Jamal's neighborhood. His chest tightened with a mix of pride and dread. Had he finally cracked the system wide open? Could this be the push that brought Darius home? The air crackled with possibility, but the shadow of Holt's phone call loomed in his mind, a storm cloud waiting to burst. Lena paced behind him, her dreadlocks swaying as she clutched her phone. This is big, Jamal. Bigger than you planned. Her voice was tight, edged with worry she couldn't hide. He nodded, eyes fixed on the crowd. They're listening. That's what matters. But even as he spoke, unease gnawed at him. The courthouse sat 3 blocks away, a gray fortress now ringed with bodies, their shouts bouncing off its stone walls. Police lights flashed in the distance, red and blue slicing through the twilight, but the cops held back, an ominous stillness that didn't sit right. What was Holt waiting for? Why hadn't he struck yet? The answer came fast and brutal. As night fell, the protests thickened, spilling into side streets. Jamal stepped onto Lena's porch, the air thick with humidity and tension, when a roar erupted 2 blocks over. Tires squealed, and a pack of pickup trucks roared into view, Confederate flags flapping from their beds. White men in hoodies and boots poured out, bats and pipes gleaming in their hands. Jamal's stomach dropped. A supremacist mob, eyes wild with hate, charged the protesters, swinging without mercy. Screams pierced the night as fists met flesh, signs splintered, and blood stained the pavement. Was this Holt's muscle? Had the judge unleashed a war on his own streets? Jamal bolted back inside, slamming the door as Lena grabbed a baseball bat from the closet. "Get down," she hissed, but he couldn't tear his eyes from the window. The mob carved through the crowd, targeting black faces with savage precision. A woman fell, clutching her head, red seeping through her fingers. A teen, Jamal's age, crumpled under a pipe, his cries drowned by the chaos. Sirens wailed, but the cops stayed blocks away, their lights a mocking glow. Jamal's fists clenched, nails digging into his palms. "They're not stopping it," he whispered, voice shaking. Lena gripped his shoulder hard. "Holt's behind this. He's sending a message." The message found Jamal an hour later. He'd slipped out the back, cutting through alleys to avoid the melee, when the mob's roar closed in. 5 of them peeled off, spotting him in the flicker of a street light. Their hoodies were stained with sweat and blood, their bats dripping red. "There's Holt's little lawyer," one bellowed, a hulking man with a shaved head and a swastika tattoo creeping up his neck. Jamal's heart slammed against his ribs. He turned to run. But the alley narrowed, trash cans blocking his path. Could he outrun them? Did he have a chance against that kind of hate? They caught him in seconds, boots pounding pavement like thunder. The tattooed leader swung first, bat cracking against Jamal's shoulder, pain exploding as he stumbled into a wall. Another hit his knee, buckling his leg, and a third smashed his ribs, the same spot the cops had bruised. He crumpled, tasting blood as they circled him, screaming slurs that burned deeper than the blows. "Thinks he's smart," one spat, kicking his side. "Holt says you're done," another roared, pipe raised for a killing strike. Jamal's vision blurred, but his mind raced, scanning for escape. A sewer grate glinted 10 feet away, rusted but loose. Could he make it? Was this his only shot? He rolled, pain searing every inch, and lunged for the grate, his fingers clawing at the metal, prying it free as a bat whistled past his head, splintering brick. The mob laughed, closing in, but Jamal squeezed through, skinny frame slipping into the dank tunnel below. His feet hit slimy concrete, and he ran, darkness swallowing him as their curses echoed above. The sewer stank of rot, water splashing his shins, but he didn't stop, navigating by touch until he found a ladder. He climbed, lungs burning, and emerged in a quiet lot, the mob's shouts fading behind him. Blood dripped from his nose, his shoulders screamed, but he was alive, if only just. He limped back to Lena's, sneaking through backyards, every rustle a threat. She met him at the door, eyes wide as she pulled him inside. "Jesus, Jamal," she gasped, grabbing a towel to press against his face. "They almost killed you." He sank onto the couch, breath ragged as she cleaned his cuts, her hands trembling. "Holt sent them," he muttered, voice raw. "They knew my name." Lena's jaw tightened. "He's not just a judge, he's a kingpin. This city's his." Jamal nodded, the truth sinking in. The protests, the video, his fight, they'd rattled Holt's throne, and now the judge was striking back, with fists and steel. By morning, the news was everywhere. Aisha's crew had caught the mob on camera, shaky footage of bats and slurs lighting up screens across the country. Online supporters dubbed Jamal a hero, a black teen defying a racist tyrant. Hashtag Jamal Fights Back trended, donations pouring in for Darius's case. Jamal watched from Lena's laptop, a flicker of hope battling the ache in his bones. Maybe this was it, the pressure Holt couldn't dodge. But then the TV flickered to a breaking story, his family's apartment, a charred skeleton against the dawn sky. The mob had torched it overnight, flames licking the thrift store suit he'd left behind. His mom stood on the curb, sobbing into a neighbor's arms, homeless now, everything gone. Jamal's throat closed, guilt clawing his chest. Had he brought this on her? Was his fight costing too much? Lena muted the TV, her voice soft but firm. They're trying to break you. Don't let them. He nodded, tears stinging his cuts, but rage burned hotter. He'd survived again. The world was watching, and Holt was slipping. Across town, the judge stood in his office, TV flickering with the fire's glow, a grin splitting his granite face. He dialed a number, voice low and venomous. Burning's not enough. Finish it. The line clicked, and his eyes glinted with a promise of worse to come. Jamal didn't see that. He sat in Lena's dim living room, bandaged and battered, staring at the laptop screen. The protests roared louder now, a city on edge, but the mob's attack had shifted something. Holt wasn't just fighting in court anymore, he was waging war on the streets. Jamal's shoulder throbbed, a reminder of how close he'd come to dying. He'd outsmarted them this time, but the fire was a gut punch, a wound deeper than any bat could leave. What would Holt unleash next? Comment with a 1 if you think Jamal's risking too much for justice, or a 2 if you torched the system right alongside him. Like and subscribe if you're hooked on this fight because the next blow is going to hit harder than you can imagine. So how does Holt top a burning home? Will Jamal dodge the judge's next strike, or has he just painted a bigger target on his back? Jamal Carter sat in Ms. Lena's cramped kitchen, the smell of antiseptic and burnt coffee thick in the air. His shoulder throbbed under a makeshift sling, his ribs ached with every breath, and his swollen face bore the mob's brutal signature. The TV flickered silently in the corner, replaying the smoldering ruins of his family's apartment, a wound that cut deeper than any bruise. His mom was safe, crashing with a cousin across town, but the loss gnawed at him, guilt and rage twisting in his gut. Lena hovered nearby, her dreadlocks pulled back, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "You can't stay here long," she said, voice low. "Holt's not done." Jamal nodded, staring at his notebook, its pages warped from sewer water but still legible. "I've got to keep going. Darius is counting on me." He spent the morning piecing together the retrial strategy, his mind a steel trap despite the pain. The photo was gone, torched with everything else, but he'd memorized every detail: Darius at the barber shop, 9:32 p.m., laughing with a razor in hand. He needed more, something Holt couldn't bury. Lena's phone buzzed, and she answered, her face softening. "It's a lawyer, white guy, says he saw Aisha's video, wants to help." Jamal's pulse quickened. A real attorney could shift the game, give him the muscle he lacked. "Tell him to come," he said, hope flickering through the haze of defeat. Tom Grayson arrived by noon, a lanky man in his 30s with sandy hair and a crisp gray suit that screamed money. He carried a leather briefcase, his blue eyes sharp but warm as he shook Jamal's hand. "Saw you take on Holt," he said, voice smooth with a faint northern twang. "Kid, you're a damn prodigy. I want in." Jamal studied him, wary but desperate. "Why help me?" Tom grinned, setting the briefcase on the table. "Holt's a bully. I've got a soft spot for underdogs, and you're the toughest I've seen." Lena raised an eyebrow but stayed quiet, letting Jamal decide. He nodded, cautious trust settling in. "All right. Let's get Darius out." They dug into the case together, Tom's legal polish blending with Jamal's raw genius. By afternoon, they'd unearthed gold, a police report buried in the precinct's digital archive, time-stamped 9:40 p.m., stating a witness saw Darius at the barber shop during the robbery window. Tom whistled, scrolling through the file on his laptop. Holt's crew hid this, probably paid off the clerk to lose it. Jamal's fists clenched, the memory of Travis's smirk flashing hot. Can we use it? Tom nodded, typing fast. Oh, we'll use it. I'll co-counsel the retrial. Holt won't know what hit him. For the first time in days, Jamal felt the tide shift, a real chance blooming amid the wreckage. The retrial hit 2 days later, the courthouse packed to the rafters, reporters crammed in the gallery, cameras rolling, there buzz a live wire through the stale air. Jamal walked in beside Tom, his thrift store suit replaced with a borrowed blazer from Lena's nephew, still too big but cleaner than blood-stained rags. Holt swept onto the bench, robes billowing, his granite face a mask of barely contained fury. His eyes locked on Jamal, glinting with malice, but flickered to Tom with a hint of unease. "Counselor Grayson," he drawled, "didn't expect you slumming it with this one." Tom smiled, cool and unshaken. "Justice isn't slumming. Your Honor, let's begin." Jamal took the podium, heart pounding but voice steady. "Your Honor, we've got new evidence proving Darius Carter's innocence. A police report filed 9:40 p.m. places him 3 miles from the crime scene during the robbery." He handed the document to the bailiff, who passed it to Holt. The judge skimmed it, jaw tightening, a vein pulsing in his thick neck. The gallery murmured, tension coiling tight. "This is admissible," Jamal pressed, citing Section 34, subsection C, his memory a blade slicing through Holt's glare. "It shows the prosecution's timeline's a lie." Holt squirmed, chair creaking under his bulk, but said nothing. His silence a crack in his armor. Tom stepped up, smooth as silk. "We've also got witness testimony corroborating the report. Darius was at the barber shop, not Peach Street. The state's case falls apart." He slid a sworn affidavit across, signed by the barber, a grizzled black man who dodged Holt's threats. The room buzzed, reporters scribbling, phones flashing. Holt's face reddened, sweat beading on his buzzcut, but he gripped the bench, fighting for control. "This is thin," he snapped, voice a growl. "You're grasping, Grayson." Jamal shot back, "It's the truth. You can't bury it this time." The gallery gasped, a jolt of shock, and Holt's eyes blazed, a predator cornered. Then the trap sprang. Tom cleared his throat, stepping forward with a sheath of papers. "Your Honor, I've got something else." His tone shifted, oily now, and Jamal's gut twisted. Tom handed the stack to Holt, who smirked as he read. "These documents show Jamal Carter fabricated the police report, forged timestamps, fake signatures. He's been playing us all." The room erupted, shouts drowning Jamal's stunned silence. He spun to Tom, voice cracking. "What? That's a lie." Tom avoided his gaze, cool as ice. "Sorry, kid. Truth's the truth." Holt banged the gavel, a triumphant crack. "Order. This changes everything. Trial suspended pending investigation. Carter, you're under arrest for fraud." Jamal's world tilted, betrayal slicing deeper than any mob's bat. The bailiff lunged, cuffs snapping on his wrists, cold metal biting his bruised skin. "You set me up," he shouted at Tom, struggling as guards dragged him back. Tom shrugged, adjusting his tie. "Holt's the boss, kid. You should have known." The gallery roared, cameras catching every second, but the victory Jamal tasted turned to ash. Holt leaned forward, grinning like a wolf over a kill. "Told you, boy, you don't win here." The gavel slammed again, and Jamal was hauled out, legs kicking, voice raw with rage. They shoved him into a holding cell, a concrete box stinking of piss and despair. The door clanged shut, locking him in with the echo of Tom's words, Holt's puppet all along. The police report, the affidavit, they'd been real, but Tom had twisted them into a noose. Jamal sank to the floor, cuffs chafing, his mind racing. He'd trusted too fast, let hope blind him. The protests outside still echoed, faint through thick walls, a lifeline he couldn't reach. How had Holt pulled this off? How deep did his claws sink? Across town, Holt sat in his office, the TV muted on a loop of Jamal's arrest. He poured bourbon into a glass, ice clinking, and toasted the screen. One down, he muttered, dialing a number. Grayson did his part. Now make sure the brother stays quiet. The line clicked, and Holt leaned back, savoring the burn of liquor and power. Jamal's fight had rattled him, sure, but this was checkmate. Or so he thought. In the cell, Jamal's eyes hardened, replaying every word, every move. Tom's betrayal was a gut punch, but it wasn't the end. He'd find a way out. He always did. But what came next would test him like never before. Jamal Carter slumped against the cold concrete wall of the holding cell, the clang of the door still ringing in his ears. The cuffs bit into his wrists, a cruel reminder of Tom Grayson's betrayal, and the dim bulb overhead buzzed like a swarm of angry wasps. The cell stank of sweat and despair, a 6x8 box with a rusted cot and a toilet that hadn't been cleaned in years. His bruised ribs throbbed, his shoulders screamed under the sling, and blood crusted his swollen lip from the mob's attack. Holt's voice echoed in his skull, that smug, "You don't win here." A taunt he couldn't shake. Was this it? Had he finally pushed too far? Footsteps thudded outside, and the door creaked open. Two guards loomed in the frame, both white, both grinning with a hunger that made Jamal's stomach twist. The first, a hulking man with a buzz cut and a scar across his chin, cracked his knuckles. Holt's punching bag, he sneered, stepping in. The second, leaner with a patchy beard, twirled a baton, eyes glinting. "Time to teach you some manners, boy." Jamal straightened, heart pounding, but his voice stayed steady. "You've got no right. Article 19, excessive force is illegal." The scarred one laughed, a guttural sound that bounced off the walls. "Rights down here. Holt's the law." The beating started fast. The scarred guard swung first, fists slamming into Jamal's jaw, snapping his head back against the wall. Pain flared white-hot as the lean one drove the baton into his gut, doubling him over. They didn't stop, trading blows like a choreographed dance, each hit a message: stop fighting, give up, die. "Think you're smart," the scarred one grunted, kneeing Jamal's ribs until something cracked. "Holt owns you now," the lean one hissed, smashing the baton across his shins. Jamal crumpled, blood pooling in his mouth, but his mind clung to survival, cataloging every move. Could he use this? Was there a way out? Days blurred into a haze of violence. They came twice a day, morning and night, dragging him from the cot to the floor, fists and boots a relentless storm. The guards rotated, but the script stayed the same: slurs, blows, Holt's name spat like a curse. "Lawyer's done," one growled, stomping his hand. "Stay down," another barked, kicking his spine. Jamal stopped counting the bruises, stopped feeling the pain as anything but fuel. He memorized their patterns. Scarface favored his right fist, Batman limped on his left leg, a third had a lazy eye that blinked too slow. Knowledge was power, even in this hell. By the fifth day, he saw his chance. The guards grew sloppy, bored with a kid who wouldn't break. Scarface left a spoon on the tray one night, a dented scrap of metal Jamal palmed before they noticed. He hid it under the cot, waiting for the right moment. His mind churned, legal codes mixing with survival instincts. Section 15, right to humane treatment, mocked him here, but escape laws danced in his head. No felony if it's self-defense. Could he pull this off? Would the system care if he did? Night fell, and a storm rolled in, thunder rumbling through the precinct's thick walls, rain lashing the barred window high above. The lean guard came alone that night, Batman, his limp worse in the damp. He unlocked the cell, smirking as he twirled the weapon. Holt says, "You're too quiet. Let's fix that." Jamal stayed still, curled on the cot, spoon tucked in his sleeve. The guard stepped close, raising the baton, and Jamal moved. He sprang up, driving the spoon's edge into Baton Man's bad knee, a sickening pop as the man howled and dropped. Jamal snatched the baton, cracking it across the guard's skull, and bolted for the open door. Alarms blared, red lights flashing, but the storm drowned the chaos, thunder masking his footsteps. He darted down the hall, bare feet slapping wet concrete, every turn a gamble. His memory guided him, a map built from 5 days of listening, left at the buzzing light, right past the leaking pipe. Shouts echoed behind, boots pounding, but the storm was his ally, rain hammering the roof like a drum roll. He found a supply closet door ajar and slipped inside, heart slamming as he scanned the dark. A loose panel in the wall caught his eye, rusted screws barely holding it. He wedged the baton under, prying until it gave, revealing a crawl space thick with dust. Could this be it? Was freedom worth the risk? He squeezed through, ribs scraping, and crawled blind, the spoon now a lifeline in his grip. The space widened, and he dug, clawing at crumbling mortar until a brick shifted, then another. Rain poured through, soaking him as he punched a hole big enough to fit. He tumbled out, landing in a puddle behind the precinct, lightning splitting the sky. Sirens wailed, but the storm cloaked him, a black shadow in a white night. He ran, lungs burning, until he hit a familiar alley, 3 miles away, Miss Lena's safe house looming through the downpour. She yanked him inside, eyes wide at his battered state. "Jamal, what did you do?" He collapsed on her floor, water pooling around him, and gasped out the truth. "Broke out, had to. They'd have killed me." Lena locked the door, grabbing a blanket, her voice trembling. "Holt's running a racket, framing black kids like Darius, pocketing cash from private prisons. I heard it from a cop friend tonight." Jamal's head snapped up, pain forgotten. "A racket? Proof?" She nodded, pulling a recorder from her pocket. "Caught him on tape, names, dates, money." His eyes blazed, a fire rekindled. "I'll use it. I'll bury him." Lena patched him up, antiseptic stinging his cuts, her hands steady but her face grim. "You're a fugitive now. They'll hunt you." Jamal gripped the blanket, resolve hardening. "Let them. I've got Holt's number." He replayed the tape, a grainy voice listing payoffs, Darius's name among dozens. It was dynamite, enough to blow Holt's empire apart. He'd expose it, bring the judge down for good. But as he planned, sirens wailed closer, a howl cutting through the storm. Lena froze, peering out the blinds. "They're here. They tracked you." Jamal's stomach dropped. The tape still in his hand. Had his escape just sealed his fate? Comment with a 1 if you think Jamal's jailbreak was a genius move, or a 2 if you'd have stayed and fought from inside. Like and subscribe if you're rooting for this kid to turn Holt's racket into rubble, because the next chapter is going to shake this city to its core. So how does Jamal dodge the sirens? Will he outsmart Holt's hunters, or has he just stepped into a trap too tight to slip? Jamal Carter froze as the sirens sliced through the storm, their wail ablaze against the drumming rain. Miss Lena's safe house, a shotgun shack on the city's ragged edge, trembled under the sound, its thin walls no match for Holt's reach. The recorder sat heavy in his hand, its tape a ticking bomb of truth. Holt's voice, cold and clipped, listing payoffs for framing black teens like Darius. Jamal's bruised ribs ached, his swollen jaw pulsed, but his mind raced, sharp as ever. "They're here," Lena whispered, peering through the blinds, her dreadlocks tight against her scalp. "How'd they find you so fast?" Jamal's stomach churned. The precinct was 3 miles away, the storm his shield. Someone had talked. Red and blue lights flashed outside, painting the room in jagged streaks. Jamal bolted to his feet, blankets slipping to the floor, water still dripping from his soaked clothes. "We've got to move," he said, voice low but firm. Lena grabbed her bat, nodding toward the back door. They slipped out, rain pelting their faces, the night a blur of shadow and thunder. Jamal clutched the recorder, its plastic slick with wet, as they darted past rusted junk and overgrown weeds. The sirens grew louder, boots splashing closer, and then the world exploded. Gunshots ripped through the storm, bullets tearing into the shack's wooden siding, splintering it like paper. Lena screamed, shoving Jamal down as a round whizzed past his ear, embedding in a fence post. He hit the mud, pain flaring through his cracked ribs, and saw them, 6 cops in tactical gear, faces masked, guns drawn, fanning out from the front. There! One shouted, voice muffled but sharp, pointing their way. Jamal's heart slammed against his chest. This wasn't an arrest. This was a hit. Holt wasn't playing anymore. He'd sent a death squad. Lena yanked him up, her bat swinging wild as she pulled him toward the next yard. Run, she yelled, voice a roar over the gunfire. They sprinted, weaving through backyards, chain-link fences rattling as they vaulted over. Bullets chewed the ground behind them, mud spraying, and Jamal's legs burned, his battered body protesting every step. He glanced back, seeing Lena stumble, her bat slipping from her grip. A cop closed in, rifle raised, and fired. The shot hit her shoulder, blood blooming dark against her shirt. She fell, a guttural cry cutting through the rain, and Jamal skidded to a stop, lungs heaving. Lena! She clutched her arm, face twisted in pain, and waved him off. Go! Get the tape out. Her eyes blazed fierce even as blood soaked her sleeve. The cop loomed over her, boot pressing her down, but Jamal couldn't stay. Another shot cracked, grazing his arm, a hot sting that snapped him back. He turned and ran, tears mixing with rain, Lena's scream echoing in his skull. She'd saved him twice now, and he'd left her to die. The recorder dug into his palm, a lifeline he couldn't lose, but guilt clawed his chest, heavier than any bruise. He cut through a maze of alleys, the city's underbelly, a tangle of trash and shadows. Sirens wailed behind, closing in, but the storm cloaked his trail, thunder drowning his gasps. He dove into a junkyard, rusted cars towering like skeletal giants, and crouched behind a gutted sedan, breath ragged. The cops fanned out, flashlights slicing the dark, their shouts lost to the wind. Jamal's mind raced, replaying Lena's fall, the tapes weighed a promise and a curse. He had to outsmart them, had to survive. He grabbed a hubcap, tossing it hard to his left. It clanged against a pile of scrap, a sharp echo, and the light swung that way, boots pounding toward the decoy. Jamal bolted right, slipping through a gap in the fence, mud sucking at his sneakers. His arm bled a steady drip he couldn't stop, but adrenaline kept him moving. He hit a quiet street, houses dark and shuttered, and ducked into a shed, its door hanging loose. The space stank of oil and rot, but it was cover, a moment to breathe. He sank against the wall, recorder clutched to his chest, and listened. The sirens faded, the storm swallowing their hunt, but his pulse wouldn't slow. Lena was gone, her blood on his hands, and Holt had won this round. Or had he? Morning broke gray and heavy, rain easing to a drizzle. Jamal slipped out, limping to a pay phone 2 blocks away, the last relic of a forgotten era. He dialed Aisha, the reporter who'd bankrolled his fine, her number burned into his memory. She picked up fast, voice tense. Jamal, where are you? He swallowed, throat dry. Safe for now. Lena's dead. Cops ambushed us. I've got proof Holt's running a racket. Aisha gasped, static crackling. Proof? What kind? He gripped the recorder. A tape, payoffs, names, all of it. Can you get it out? She didn't hesitate. Meet me at the library, back entrance, 1 hour. He made it, every step a gamble, the city waking around him. Aisha waited in a beat-up hatchback, braids tucked under a cap, eyes wide as he slid in. He handed her the tape, arm shaking, blood staining the seat. Holt sent them to kill me, he said, voice flat. She nodded, slotting the tape into a player. Holt's voice spilled out, cold and damning, listing dates and dollars, Darius's name a footnote in a ledger of corruption. Aisha's jaw tightened. This is huge. I'll hack a police radio broadcast. It live. People need to hear. Jamal leaned back, exhaustion hitting hard. Do it fast. They're still coming. By noon, the tape hit the airwaves, Aisha's crew patching it through a pirated signal. Holt's voice boomed across the city, raw and unfiltered, sparking outrage. Protests flared, new, bigger, angrier crowds choking the streets, chanting, Holt must fall. Online, the audio went viral, millions sharing the proof of Holt's racket. Jamal watched from Aisha's hideout, a dingy attic above a bar, the TV flickering with chaos. Supporters hailed him, a fugitive hero, donations flooding in again. He'd struck back, turned Holt's weapon against him. For a moment, he let himself believe it was enough, that Darius might walk free on this wave. But then he saw it, a glint in the attic window, a sniper scope catching the midday sun. His breath caught, body tensing as he dropped to the floor. Aisha spun, confused, but he grabbed her arm, pulling her down. They're here, he whispered, heart hammering. The scope vanished, but the message was clear. Holt wasn't done. Across town, the judge sat in his office, TV blaring the tape, his granite face a mask of rage. He smashed the bourbon glass against the wall, shards scattering, and dialed a number. He's still alive, he growled. Fix it now. The line clicked, and Holt's eyes burned, a promise of blood in their depths. Jamal crawled to the window, peering out. The street below was quiet, too quiet, a trap waiting to spring. Aisha clutched the player, tape still inside, her hands trembling. They won't stop, she said, voice small. Jamal nodded, mind racing. He'd survived the ambush, kept the tape alive, but Lena's death was a scar he couldn't shake. Holt had escalated to murder, and the sniper was proof. No more games, just bullets. He'd bought time, lit a fire across the city, but the hunter was closing in, and this attic wouldn't hold. What came next would be life or death. Jamal Carter crouched beneath the attic window, the sniper's glint still burned into his retinas, a silent promise of death. Aisha huddled beside him, her breath shallow, the tape player clutched tight in her trembling hands. The attic above the bar was a coffin of splintered wood and dust, the air thick with the stench of stale beer drifting up from below. Rain pattered on the roof, a faint echo of last night's storm, but the quiet outside was louder, a predator's stillness before the strike. Jamal's arm bled through his sleeve, a dull ache from the graze, his ribs a symphony of pain from the mob and jail. Lena's blood-soaked scream replayed in his skull, a wound that wouldn't close. Had Holt really turned the city into a kill zone? Was there any line he wouldn't cross? He crawled to Aisha's laptop, its screen glowing faintly in the dark. We need more, he whispered, voice raw. The tape's big, but Holt's still standing. Aisha nodded, braids brushing her shoulders as she powered it up. What's the play? Jamal's mind churned, legal codes colliding with survival instincts. Holt's emails. If he's running a racket, there's a trail. We hack him, leak it all. Aisha's eyes widened, but her fingers flew across the keys. Risky. He'll have security. Jamal's jaw tightened. He's got snipers. Risk's already here. Could they pull this off? Would Holt's own words bury him deeper? Aisha cracked into the library's public Wi-Fi, a weak signal but enough to work. She navigated dark web forums, her hacker passed a lifeline now, and within an hour, they breached Holt's private server. Jamal watched, heart pounding, as emails flooded the screen, payoffs to cops, orders to frame kids, even a hit list with Darius's name circled in red. One stood out, dated yesterday, Grayson's in. Finish the boy tonight. Jamal's stomach twisted, Tom's betrayal a fresh stab, but the real prize was a memo to a private prison CEO, 10 grand per head, black teens priority. Holt's racket laid bare, a machine of greed and hate. This is it, Aisha breathed, copying files to a drive, enough to sink him. They moved fast, uploading the emails to a rogue journalist site Aisha trusted, a whistleblower page beyond Holt's reach. By dusk, the leak hit, a digital wildfire racing through the city. News stations picked it up, anchors stammering over Holt's words, keep the jails full, profits up. Protests exploded, bigger than before, crowds choking downtown with chants of Holt must fall. Jamal peered out the window, the street below alive with flickering lights, a sea of rage he'd unleashed. Online, the world roared, feds announcing a probe into Holt's court. Had he finally cornered the judge? Could this be the knockout blow? The retrial loomed next morning, a battlefield Jamal couldn't miss. He slipped out at dawn, Aisha's cap pulled low over his swollen face, the borrowed blazer stiff with dried mud. The courthouse was a war zone, protesters clashing with riot cops, tear gas clouding the air. Jamal pushed through, lungs burning, and made it inside. The gallery packed with cameras and fury. Holt stormed in, robes billowing, his granite face a mask of barely contained wrath. His eyes locked on Jamal, a predator tasting blood, but the crowd's buzz rattled him, a throne shaking underfoot. Order, he bellowed, gavel cracking, but his voice trembled, a crack in the armor. Jamal took the podium, legs shaking but spine steel. Your Honor, new evidence has surfaced, emails proving you framed my brother and dozens more. You're running a racket with the prisons. He held up printouts Aisha had rushed him, Holt's own words in black ink, and slid them to the bailiff. The gallery erupted, shouts drowning Holt's snarl as he snatched the papers, his buzz cut gleamed with sweat, his thick neck pulsing as he read. This is slander, he roared, slamming the stack down. You're a fugitive, Carter, no standing here. Jamal fired back, voice cutting through. Section 34, subsection D, evidence of corruption overrides that. You're exposed. Tom Grayson stood at the prosecution table, suit crisp, his sandy hair unruffled. He smirked, stepping forward. Your Honor, this is a stunt, the emails are fake, cooked up by a desperate kid. Jamal spun, rage boiling. You're in on this, Tom. You sold me out. The room buzzed, cameras flashing, but Holt seized the chaos. Enough. I'm suspending this trial again. Fraud investigation still active. He banged the gavel, a desperate crack, but Jamal pressed on. The feds are coming, Holt. Your racket's done. Holt's face purpled, a vein bulging, and he leaned forward, spitting venom. You think you've won, boy? You're nothing. The bailiff moved, but the crowd's roar held him back, a tidal wave of outrage. Holt's chair creaked as he stood, towering over the bench, and pointed at Jamal. Mistrial declared. Get him out. Guards lunged, but protesters stormed the doors, blocking their path. Jamal slipped through, heart hammering, the printouts still clutched tight. Outside, the air was thick with gas and screams, but he'd done it. Holt squirmed, the feds circled, a victory carved from betrayal and blood. He ducked into an alley, breath ragged, thinking he'd turned the tide, but Holt wasn't finished. Across town, the judge paced his office, TV blaring the leak, bourbon bottle empty on his desk. He dialed a number, voice a low growl. He's still breathing. Move the plan up. The line clicked, and his granite face split into a snarl. At the same moment, feds raided Jamal's hideout, Aisha's attic, guns drawn, shouting, threat to public order. They found it empty, but hauled him in from the alley, cuffs snapping tight, a black van swallowing him whole. He landed in solitary, a concrete tomb deeper than the precinct cell, no light, no sound, just the echo of Holt's laugh in his head. Had he pushed too far? Was this Holt's final checkmate? The Fed's boots faded, leaving Jamal in darkness, the email's triumph souring fast. He'd exposed the racket, lit a fire under Holt's throne, but now he was buried, a ghost in a system that hated him. His arm throbbed, blood crusting and new, but his mind stayed sharp, replaying the leak, the courtroom chaos. The Feds weren't justice, they were Holt's shield, a twist he hadn't seen coming. He'd won a battle, but the war was slipping through his fingers, and Holt's next move loomed, a shadow he couldn't outrun. Comment with a 1 if you think Jamal's hack was worth the heat, or a 2 if he should have played it safer with Holt on his tail. Like and subscribe if you're hooked on this kid's fight to burn the system down, because the next twist's going to hit like a freight train. So what's Holt's endgame now? Can Jamal claw out of solitary, or has the judge finally caged the genius for good? Jamal Carter sat in the black void of solitary, the concrete floor cold against his bruised legs, the silence a weight heavier than the cuffs chaining his wrists to the wall. The cell was a tomb, 6 feet square, no window, no cot, just a drain in the corner stinking of rust and rot. His arm bled through the sling, a slow drip from the sniper's graze, his ribs cracked and screaming with every breath. The Feds had dumped him here hours ago, their boots echoing away, leaving him to Holt's mercy. Darkness pressed in, but his mind burned, replaying the leaked emails, the courtroom chaos, Aisha's voice on the hacked radio. Had he pushed Holt too far? Was this the judge's final cage? The door screeched open, metal grinding on metal, and light stabbed his eyes. 3 guards loomed, shadows against the glare, their uniforms crisp, but their faces twisted with hate. The leader, a squat man with a shaved head and a scar curling his lip, carried a hose, water dripping from its nozzle. Holt's little genius, he sneered, voice thick with venom. The others flanked him, one with a cattle prod sparking blue, the other cracking knuckles tattooed with swastikas. Jamal straightened, chains rattling, and spat blood onto the floor. You can't break me. Article 15, Humane Treatment. The scarred one laughed, a wet, ugly sound. Down here, boy, Holt writes the rules. They didn't waste time. Scarface aimed the hose, blasting Jamal with ice-cold water, the force slamming him back, chains biting his wrists, his gasp drowned as they pinned him. The prods wheeled or jabbing it into his side, electricity searing through muscle. Pain exploded, a scream ripping from his throat, but he clenched his teeth, swallowing it. Nigger thinks he's tough, Swastika growled, slamming a fist into Jamal's jaw, blood spraying the wall. Holt says you're done. Scarlet snarled, cranking the hose higher, water flooding his nose, his mouth choking him. Was this how it ended? Could he hold on through this hell? The torture stretched into days, a relentless cycle of water and voltage. They came at odd hours, waking him from fitful sleep with icy blasts, prods sizzling against wet skin, fists pounding his already broken body. Quit fighting, one hissed, stomping his hand until bones crunched. Holt owns this town, another spat, waterboarding him again, the cloth over his face a suffocating shroud. Jamal's world narrowed to survival, his photographic memory a lifeline. He recited laws in his head, Section 12, Section 19, a rhythm against the pain, keeping him sane. His voice rasped defiance when they paused. You're criminals, I'll prove it. They laughed, but their eyes flickered, a crack in their cruelty. By the 6th day, a new guard appeared, younger, black, his face tight with unease. He slipped in alone, carrying a tray, no hose, no prod. Eat, he muttered, setting it down, a stale sandwich in water. Jamal squinted through swollen eyes, suspicion flaring. Why are you helping? The guard glanced at the door, voice low. I heard the tape, Holt's dirty, you're right. He hesitated, then slid a burner phone from his pocket, dropping it beside the tray. Make it quick. Jamal's pulse spiked, hope a faint spark. Was this real? Could he trust this lifeline? He grabbed the phone, fingers trembling, and dialed. Aisha, she answered fast, voice sharp with worry, Jamal, you alive? He coughed, blood flecking his lips. Barely, solitary, they're torturing me, waterboarding, prods, everything. Aisha cursed, static crackling. I'll get it out live, hold on. The line cut, and the guard snatched the phone, bolting as boots echoed outside. Jamal sank back, sandwich untouched, the spark flaring brighter. If Aisha could broadcast this, Holt's grip might slip. But the guards returned, Scarlet sniffing betrayal, and the beatings doubled, water choking him until he blacked out. Morning broke, and the city erupted. Aisha's crew hacked every radio, every stream. Jamal's voice rasping through, they're torturing me, Holt's orders, don't let him win. Protests surged nationwide, streets clogging with millions, signs blazing, save Jamal, in furious red. News vans swarmed the prison, feds scrambling under the spotlight, their raid on Aisha's hideout now a stain. Inside, Jamal heard faint chants through thick walls, a lifeline piercing the dark. Scarlet stormed in, face purple, but a suited man followed, barking orders, out now. The guards retreated, and the suit unlocked Jamal's chains, voice clipped. Public pressure. You're free. Jamal staggered out, sunlight blinding after days in the void. Aisha met him at the gate, braids wild, eyes red from sleepless nights. You did it, she said, steadying him as he swayed, his body a map of bruises and cuts. They couldn't keep you quiet. He nodded, throat raw, the chants a roar in his ears. Protesters swarmed, hands reaching to lift him up, a hero forged in pain. The feds backed off, Holt's name a curse on every tongue. And for a moment, Jamal tasted triumph, a win carved from his own blood. He'd broken their silence, turned their torture into a weapon. Was this the tipping point? Had Holt finally overplayed his hand? But the victory shattered fast. Aisha's phone buzzed, a prison contact on the line, voice shaking. Darius, he's been stabbed, critical, Holt's crew got him inside. Jamal's legs buckled, Aisha catching him as the world tilted. No, he rasped, tears cutting through the grime on his face, no. The crowd hushed, sensing the blow, and Aisha pulled him to her car, speeding to the hospital 40 miles away. Jamal stared out, numb, the recorder's truth a hollow echo now. Darius, his anchor, his fight, was slipping away. Holt's vengeance striking where it hurt most. They reached the ward, antiseptic stinging Jamal's nose as he stumbled to Darius's bed. His brother lay pale, tubes snaking from his chest, blood seeping through bandages. A guard stood nearby, smirking, a Holt loyalist untouched by the feds. Accident, he muttered, but Jamal knew better. Holt's reach stretched even here, a blade in the dark. Darius's eyes fluttered, weak but alive, and he gripped Jamal's hand, voice a whisper. You're winning, little man, don't stop. Jamal choked, nodding, but the monitor flatlined, a scream tearing from his throat as nurses rushed in. Darius was gone, Holt's final cut, and Jamal's world crumbled, triumph drowned in loss. Across town, Holt watched the hospital feed on a private screen, a grin splitting his granite face. He poured bourbon, ice clinking, and toasted the air. Checkmate, boy, he muttered, savoring the kill. But Jamal, kneeling by Darius's body, felt rage ignite through the grief, a fire Holt couldn't snuff. He'd lost everything, but he'd fight harder now, for Darius, for Lena, for every name on that tape. Jamal Carter stood in the hospital corridor, the antiseptic stench burning his nose as Darius's body lay still behind the glass, the flatlines echo clawed at his skull, a sound he couldn't unhear. His brother's last words, don't stop, a fire in his battered chest. His arm hung limp in the sling, blood crusting, the swollen jaw throbbing from days of torture. Aisha gripped his shoulder, her braids brushing his ear, voice tight. We've got to move, retrials in 2 hours. Jamal nodded, wiping tears with a bruised hand, rage swallowing grief. Holt had taken everything, Lena, his home, now Darius, but he'd pay today. They sped back, Aisha's hatchback weaving through a city on fire. Protests choked the streets, smoke rising from torched cars, chants of "justice for Jamal," a war cry against Holt's empire. The courthouse loomed, a gray fortress ringed with riot cops, their shields glinting in the noon sun. Jamal stumbled out, borrowed blazer torn, his swollen face a map of war. Reporters swarmed, cameras rolling, but he pushed through, every step a fight against collapse. Inside, the air was thick with sweat and fury, the gallery packed to bursting, live feeds beaming nationwide. This wasn't just a trial anymore, it was a reckoning. Holt swept in, robes billowing, his granite face etched with venom, his buzzcut gleamed under the lights, but his eyes flickered, a king sensing his throne crack. The crowd hushed, tension coiling tight as he settled onto the bench, gavel in hand. "Order," he boomed, voice a thunderclap, but it wavered, a hairline fracture in his control. Jamal took the podium, legs trembling, the hospital records clutched in his good hand, proof of Darius's stabbing, a guard's initials scrolled on the transfer order. "Your Honor," he rasped, voice raw but steel, "Darius Carter was murdered in prison, your orders." "I've got the evidence." He slid the records forward, the bailiff passing them up, and Holt snatched them, jaw clenching as he read. The gallery buzzed, a low roar, cameras zooming in. "This proves nothing," Holt snapped, tossing the papers down. "A thug got what he deserved." Jamal's blood boiled, and he stepped closer, voice rising. "It proves you're a killer. You run a racket, frame kids, cash in on their lives. The emails, the tape, now this. You're caught." Holt's face purpled, a vein bulging, but Jamal didn't stop, pulling the recorder from his pocket, its tape still intact. "Play it," he said, handing it over, "let them hear you." The bailiff hesitated, but Aisha shouted from the gallery, "Do it." The crowd roared approval, and Holt's glare faltered, sweat beading on his thick neck. The tape spun, Holt's voice spilling out, cold and damning. 10 grand per head, black teens priority. Gasps ripped through the room, followed by shouts, fists pounding benches. Jamal pressed on, holding up the hospital log. "You ordered Darius stabbed to shut me up." Guard T. Rollins signed it, "Your man." "Lie to that." Holt slammed the gavel, a desperate crack, but his voice shook. "This is a setup, you forged it all, boy." Jamal's eyes blazed, trapping Holt in the lie. "Forged? Like your cops forged my arrest? Like Tom forged my evidence? You're unraveling, Holt." He pointed to the log, voice ablade. "Rollins confessed on tape too, said you paid him 5 grand to stick Darius. It's over." The gallery erupted, a tidal wave of outrage, protesters banging on the doors outside. Holt stood, towering over the bench, and roared, "Silence." But his control slipped, a snarl twisting his face as he grabbed the gavel like a weapon. Jamal saw the crack, the rage boiling over, and pushed harder. "Admit it, you killed my brother." Holt snapped, his granite mask shattered, and he hurled the gavel across the room, wood splintering against the wall. "You little bastard," he bellowed, voice a primal howl, lunging over the bench. The crowd screamed, cameras catching every second as he charged Jamal, chair crashing behind him. Bailiffs rushed in, grabbing Holt's arms, but he thrashed, spitting, eyes wild with hate. "I'll bury you all," he roared, robes tangling as he fell, a king dethroned on live TV. Jamal stood firm, heart hammering, the chaos of victory he'd bled for. The jury, wide-eyed, whispered among themselves, the truth undeniable now. Order collapsed, protesters breached the doors, flooding the courtroom, fists raised, voices deafening. Holt was dragged back, cuffs snapping on his wrists, his buzzcut matted with sweat as he spat curses. The jury forewoman stood, voice cutting through, "We've seen enough. Darius Carter's cleared, not guilty." Cheers exploded, a thunderclap of relief, but Jamal barely heard, staggering to Aisha's side. She pulled him into the hall, away from the melee, as feds swarmed in, Holt's arrest a headline blazing across screens. "You did it," she whispered, steadying him, "he's down." They raced back to the hospital, Jamal's legs buckling as he reached Darius's room. His brother lay still, a sheet pulled over his face, but Jamal knelt, gripping his cold hand, tears carving through the grime on his cheeks. "I got you free," he choked, the triumph hollow, Darius's death a wound Holt's cuffs couldn't heal. Aisha stood silent, her camera off, giving him this moment. The city burned outside, protests morphing into riots, but here time stopped, grief and victory tangled tight. He'd won, exposed Holt, cleared Darius's name, but the cost was a brother he'd never hug again. Then the ground shook, a blast ripped through the air, glass shattering as a fireball bloomed outside the hospital. Screams pierced the ward, nurses diving for cover, and Jamal spun, heart slamming, smoke billowed from the courthouse 3 blocks away, a bomb's echo rattling his bones. Aisha yanked him down, debris raining, her voice sharp, "Holt's crew." The TV flickered on, a breaking news banner flashing, explosion at courthouse, dozens dead. Jamal's stomach dropped, the victory souring fast. Holt, cuffed in a van, grinned on the feed, a predator unshaken even in chains. Jamal stumbled to the window, smoke choking the sky, sirens wailing, a new war. The blast was Holt's final card, a massacre to punish the city that dared defy him. Bodies littered the street, protesters and cops alike, blood pooling in the chaos. Aisha gripped his arm, face pale. "He planned this, even locked up, he's hitting back." Jamal's fists clenched, rage surging through the grief. He'd torn Holt down, but the judge had torched the board, a parting shot that left dozens dead. The hospital trembled, patients screaming, and Jamal knew this wasn't the end. Holt's war was just beginning. Across town, Holt sat in the Fed's van, cuffs glinting, his granite face split with a smirk. He'd lost the bench, but his network burned bright, a bomb his last laugh. Jamal's win had cost too much, and the judge reveled in it, a king fallen but unbroken in the war. Jamal stood over Darius, resolve hardening through the tears. Holt thought he'd won this round, but Jamal wasn't done, not yet. Jamal Carter stood by the hospital window, the acrid smoke from the courthouse bomb stinging his eyes as it clawed through the shattered glass. The city burned below, a hellscape of fire and screams, the blast's echo still rattling his bruised ribs. Darius lay dead behind him, a sheet over his face, his last words, "Don't stop," a chain binding Jamal to this war. His arm hung limp in the sling, blood seeping through his swollen jaw throbbing from days of torture. Aisha crouched beside him, her braids tangled with debris, her voice a whisper over the chaos. "Holt's crew did this. Even cuffed, he's killing." Jamal's fists clenched, nails digging into his palms, rage a live wire through his grief. This wasn't justice, it was slaughter. Outside, the streets erupted. Riots tore through the city, a tidal wave of fury sparked by the bomb. Protesters clashed with riot cops, Molotovs arcing through the air, shattering against shields in bursts of flame. Sirens wailed, a useless howl against the carnage as looters smashed storefronts, glass raining like confetti. Jamal watched, heart pounding as a sniper shot cracked from a rooftop, dropping a protester mid-scream, blood pooling on the pavement. Another fired, then another, a chorus of death orchestrated by Holt's unseen hands. Aisha yanked him back, glass crunching underfoot. "They're everywhere. We've got to hide." But Jamal's eyes stayed fixed on the inferno. Had he sparked this? Was Darius's freedom worth this blood? They fled the ward, Aisha leading him through back hallways, nurses scrambling past with stretchers, the hospital trembled, power flickering as generators groaned under the strain. Jamal's legs shook, every step a fight against collapse, but he clutched the recorder, its tape a lifeline through the haze. They reached a janitor's closet, a cramped hole stinking of bleach, and barricaded the door with a mop. Aisha pulled her laptop, screen cracked but glowing, and hacked into a live feed. The city unspooled in chaos, fires gutting downtown, cops beating kids with batons, snipers picking off anyone who dared stand tall. Holt's network, she muttered, fingers flying. He planned this if he fell. Jamal sank against the wall, the recorders weighed a stone in his hand. He's not alone, he rasped, voice raw from screaming Darius's name, someone's running him. Aisha nodded, pulling files from the dark web, her earlier breach into Holt's server now a gold mine. Look. She spun the screen, emails flashing, Holt to a council, names coded but power clear, judges, CEOs, a shadow cabal bleeding the city dry. One stood out, a directive dated weeks ago, if exposed, burn it all. Leave no trace. Jamal's stomach twisted, the bomb's purpose clicking into place. This wasn't just revenge, it was a purge, a system shielding itself with fire and lead. He grabbed the laptop, his good hand trembling as he scrolled. Another file, a list of payoffs, linked Holt to private prisons, police chiefs, even a senator's aide. There's bigger than him, he said, voice rising, a whole damn machine. Aisha's eyes widened, but she kept typing, uploading the files to her whistleblower site. We leak this, it's war, not just Holt, everyone. Jamal nodded, resolve hardening through the pain. Let it burn. They've taken enough. The files hit the net, a digital Molotov racing through cyberspace, and within minutes, news feeds screamed, Holt's cabal exposed. Corruption network unveiled. The city's roar grew louder, a beast waking to its chains. Feds swarmed in, black vans cutting through the smoke, their raid a belated stab at control. Aisha's leak forced their hand, agents storming precincts, courthouses, corporate towers, cuffs snapping on dozens, cops, clerks, suits with blood on their ledgers. Jamal watched from the closet's cracked window, the chaos a mirror to his soul. Protesters cheered as Holt's cronies were dragged out, faces pale under flashing lights, but the snipers kept firing, a last gasp of defiance. Aisha's phone buzzed, a contact from the prison. They're moving fast, the voice crackled, Holt still pulling strings, even locked up. Jamal's jaw tightened. Of course, he was. They slipped out of the hospital, a madhouse of wounded and weeping, and raced to a new hideout, a basement under a burned-out church. Jamal nursed Darius's memory, the recorder his only anchor as Aisha patched into police chatter. The feds had Holt in a max security van, but his network fought back, bombs rocking suburbs now, cops turning rogue to protect their paymasters. Jamal hacked a burner phone, sending the cabal files to every news outlet, his voice a ghost on the airwaves. They killed my brother, they're killing us all. Stop them. The city heard, millions rising, but the cost was a river of blood. Night fell, and the basement shook, footsteps pounding above. Aisha froze, laptop glowing as the door splintered open. A hit squad burst in, 6 men in black tactical gear, guns raised, eyes cold behind masks. Carter, one barked, rifle trained, Holt says goodbye. Jamal lunged for the recorder, but a boot smashed his hand, bones crunching as he screamed. Aisha swung a pipe, cracking a skull, but they swarmed her, a shot ringing out, blood spraying as she fell. Jamal roared, diving for her, but a barrel pressed to his temple, freezing him cold. Move, and you're next. The leader snarled, dragging him up. They hauled him out of the church's ruins, smoldering around them, and threw him into a van. The drive was a blur, tires screeching through a city of flame, until they stopped at the hospital again, a twisted full circle. Jamal stumbled in, cuffed and bleeding, the squad shoving him to Darius's room. His brother's body was gone, the bed empty, but a guard waited, smirking, a blade still wet with blood in his hand. Holt's orders, he said, twirling it, took him out slow. Now you. Jamal's heart stopped. The guard's grin a mirror to Holt's. But then a crash echoed, feds breaching the ward, guns blazing. The squad turned, firing back, and Jamal dove, rolling under the bed as bullets tore the room apart. The firefight was chaos, bodies dropping, blood pooling, but Jamal crawled free, the recorder lost in the fray. He staggered out, smoke choking his lungs, and found Aisha's car keys still in it. He drove blind with tears to a safe house across town, a friend's attic he'd memorized months back. There he collapsed, the city's wail a dirge for Darius, for Aisha, for everyone Holt's cabal had crushed. The TV flickered on, feds parading arrested suits, but the news cut to Holt in his cell, grinning through bars. "It's not over," he mouthed, a promise that chilled Jamal's blood. Jamal sat alone, the attic a coffin of grief, his vow to fight now a blade without a sheath. The cabal was exposed, dozens cuffed, but Darius was gone, Aisha missing, and Holt's network still burned the city to ash. He'd lit the match, but the fire consumed everything he loved, and the hit squad's raid proved Holt's reach was unbroken, even in chains. He clutched his broken hand, rage a furnace in his chest, and swore revenge, a lone warrior against a hydra he'd only begun to cut. This story of Jamal Carter reveals raw truths about resilience, betrayal, and the cost of justice in a world rigged against the powerless. Jamal's journey teaches that brilliance can emerge from the margins, a black teen's photographic memory toppling a corrupt empire when no one else dared. His relentless fight against Judge Holt's systemic racism shows that courage isn't the absence of fear, but action through it, every beating, every loss fueling his defiance. Yet the tale warns of trust's fragility. Tom's betrayal and Uncle Malcolm's treachery prove that allies can wield the sharpest knives, especially when power tempts. The deepest lesson lies in sacrifice. Jamal's victories cleared Darius's name but couldn't save his life, a reminder that justice often demands a price steeper than triumph can repay. Holt's cabal, a network of judges and tycoons, exposes how racism isn't just personal venom, it's a machine grinding lives for profit, resilient even when exposed. Jamal's final vow, clutching that USB in a burning city, underscores that the fight against such evil is never truly won. It's a war passed to the next warrior. This story urges us to question who holds power, to challenge the systems that crush, and to stand firm when the cost feels unbearable, because silence is complicity. So, what would you risk to expose a truth like Jamal did? Comment below. Like and subscribe to 30 Minds if this tale of grit and betrayal struck a chord. Share it to spark the conversation further. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for joining this journey through a city of flame with injustice. May you find strength to fight your own battles and light in the darkest corners.